Hi everyone, welcome to my kitchen. My name is Erin and today we're going to bake from scratch tasty pecan pear pie, or maybe pear pecan pie. Okay, so I got this recipe from Brenda Gant, Cooking with Brenda. I happened to tune in one day. She was I guess I got on Facebook right at the right time and she popped up on my feed and she was cooking pears. Well, I love pears, so I was like, okay, let's see what she's doing. So I'm gonna start peeling this last pear while I tell you this story. So she was boiling pears in water and was telling us about this pecan or pear pecan pie. I guess I switched it to pecan pear pie because I'm going to do it a little bit different than she did. I am actually going to use this pie in place of our pecan pie at Thanksgiving, which I know is probably a sin of the Thanksgiving menu world. But my husband tried it and he was like, oh my gosh, this is so good. And he does not like pears. So I was like, we've got to put this on the menu. So we're gonna make it today because happy Veterans Day. We are going to cook a meal for a family. They are friends of ours, and the dad of the family is a veteran. So we're making a meal for them to say thank you for his service. So, and as I say that, thank you to all of you who are veterans or have veterans in your family and the sacrifice that you have made also. We are so grateful for the service of all of the men and women in the United States. We are so thankful. So you're gonna peel 7 pears. Peel 7 pears, and then I'm gonna show you, let me rinse my hands real quick. When I did it the first time, after I watched it, I got right up and came in the kitchen, and I had 4 pears in the kitchen. And so I went ahead and cooked them, and this is how I changed it a little bit, because her pie was full of pears and mine was not, and she only put a little bit of pecans, and I covered the rest of the filling with pecans to make up for the lack of pears. And it was out of this world delicious. So over here in my pot, I've got the 7 pears, and you don't have to dice them thinly or anything like that. They're just real chunky, just in there real chunky. And then I'm going to put a half a cup. I'm gonna put a half a cup of water, and then let me not reach over you. Then I'm going to turn the oven on medium high and get that to a boil. And then I will turn it down to a simmer and let the pears soften. As they begin to soften, I will check them, and then I'm just going to just use my fork and just get them into smaller pieces because they'll be tender enough where you can do that, and you don't have to spend the time cutting them to the size that you want. Also, pears are kind of finicky, so with them being bigger chunks, you don't end up with a mushy pear pie. So when I went to the store, they had a whole bunch of pears that were really ripe. They were really ripe. And so I went ahead and used those today. And then I also got some green pears that were not ripe for Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving is, I believe, in 2 weeks. I think we're 2 weeks away. So those are in the fridge, and I probably will end up making it probably a week before, and then not cooking it in the oven and just freezing it and then pulling it out Thanksgiving Day. So that will be perfect. So we're gonna let this come to a boil, and while that is happening, I'm gonna get the pie crust going. So for the pie crust, I use 3 cups of einkorn flour. You can do 3 cups of all-purpose flour. I use 3 cups of all-purpose einkorn, but all-purpose unbleached white flour would be great replacement. And then I use lard or tallow. Today I've got tallow, but if you don't have lard or tallow, then just use Crisco. The Crisco, okay, our pears started boiling, so I have lowered them to medium low. They were medium high, and I'm just gonna let them continue to soften while we get the crust going. And you can stir. I really feel like they're fine. Just start doing what you need to for the crust. And then for the crust, I have a stick and a half of cold butter that I'm adding to the flour. 3 cups of all-purpose flour, and then 2 tablespoons of sugar. And then I add, because I am using tallow, I'm only going to do a teaspoon of salt, because I don't need any more than that, since I'm using and I might even just do, I'm just gonna do 3/4 a teaspoon. If you're not using tallow, if you're using Crisco, go ahead and do a teaspoon of salt. Okay, so I've got that in there. With my pastry cutter, I'm just going to make sure all of that is incorporated. Okay, so you can do this in your food processor. I just here lately have enjoyed using Jeff's grandmother's bowl to make my crust instead of pulling out the appliance. I love my grandma's pastry cutter, so it's just kind of a fun thing to do when you're cooking in the kitchen and you're using something that grandparents that you got from grandparents, those kinds of things. It's just fun memories, right? Okay, so then I'm gonna add a stick and a half of diced but cold butter, and then I'm going to do 1/4 cup of 1/4 cup of Crisco. I went back and looked at my recipe, and the Crisco measurement was 1/3. So I cut, for tallow or lard, I cut it to 1/4. If you're going to use Crisco, you want to do 1/3 cup. Okay, so then we're just going to start cutting this flour in. Okay, at this point, I've got the crust where everything is cut in and it looks like peas. Some people say sand, but it's all cut in real nice. Now I have never measured my water, y'all. So what I'm gonna try to do today is I'm going to do it, I'm gonna use my 1/3 cup measurer, and I'm going to pour in 1/3 cup of cold water, okay? And then I'm going to just stir and just mix that. Okay, and then I'm gonna do another 1/3 of a cup. Now with all-purpose flour, you may not need as much water. I'm not sure. It's been a while since I've done an all-purpose flour. I've been using einkorn and I love it. Okay, so that's getting there. So now we're gonna do another 1/3 cup. So that's a cup. And I feel like, no ice cubes. I feel like that is going to be the amount. We'll see. Okay, and so at this point, I kind of have to get in and use my hands. So I just, and to try not to get so much of the crust on my hands, I pull from the bottom where the flour is and I fold it around onto the wet dough. And then that way you don't get as much flour. You're still gonna get dough on your hands, but I feel like it's manageable. And I like more of a wet pastry dough. So if you are more of a, if you like more of a dry pastry dough, you are more than welcome to not add as much water. I just like for it to be a little bit wet so that when I put it in the refrigerator to rest for 30 minutes, it stays soft and doesn't dry out as fast, I feel like. Because, you know, you always put flour on your mat and you roll and you put flour, and so I don't want to add, I don't want to have a dry crust. So I always, as you can see, it's kind of tacky and wet. But that is what I like. So it is totally your preference. Also, I do want to say that Miss Brenda used a frozen pie crust. So you can totally do that too. You do not have to do a from scratch pie crust at all. You can totally go to your store and get your favorite pie crust in the frozen section, or the rollout pie crust. I actually love that crust. It's awesome. Let me go wash my hands. You can hear the pears boiling in the water. And you can just, I'm just using my wooden spoon, and you can just, they're so soft, you can just do this and just chop them up. And then if you see a large piece, you can just kind of push it to the bottom. I feel like those are soft enough, so I am turning the heat off and just letting them sit there until we're ready for them. We're going to wrap our pie crust in saran wrap, and then it will sit in the refrigerator for 30 minutes, and then we will be back to get everything else going. Okay, while I'm waiting on the pie crust, I'm going to go ahead and get the sugar, butter sugar filling that we're going to pour over the pecans ready to go, so that because once I get the pie crust rolled out, it's going to go chop chop real quick. So I've got 3/4 of a stick. So basically cut off 2 tablespoons of a stick of butter, and that's what you want to melt. So we're gonna melt that, and then we're gonna add to that some sugar. And I have to look at what I wrote down because I also changed this. Okay, so we're gonna do 1/2 cup of sugar, of white sugar, and then 1/4 cup of brown sugar. So and I'm just using the pot that I melted the butter in. because it's the perfect pot. No reason to dirty another dish, right? Maddie will thank me. Maddie does the dishes. Not all of them, but she does the dinner dishes, so. Okay, so then I'm just gonna pack a 1/4 cup, and I'm just using my 1/2 cup measure. I'm just gonna fill it halfway. Okay, so we're gonna pack and do brown sugar, and you cannot see. Let's see. Okay, so 1/2 cup of white sugar, and then 1/4 cup of brown sugar, and I'm actually using light brown. If you have dark brown, that will be fine too. And then we're going to take an egg. Now I have already melted the butter, so it is cool. I'm just gonna kind of beat that up a little bit. And then okay, then to that mixture, we're gonna add a teaspoon of cinnamon. And then I'm going to add 1/4 cup of molasses. And maybe even 1/8 of a cup. It's not very much. It's just enough to give it that rich pecan pie flavor. Okay. And then you're just going to mix all that in. And it looks just like my pecan pie filling. It's just not as much. Because this is just going to be a topping, and then it will melt over those pecans. And it does something magical. It makes them so good. Okay, so then that's what it looks like. It's thick. All right, we are ready, waiting on that pie crust. Okay, so I've pulled the pie crust out, and this, of course, I don't think I said this, but this makes 2 pie crusts. So what I'm gonna do is I'm going to make one and put it in my foil pan, and I'm gonna freeze this for my coconut cream pie and chocolate cream pie for Thanksgiving. So that way my crust will already be made, and all I have to do is pull it out and pre-bake it and then put my filling in. Okay, so in order to do that, you're just gonna cut that crust in half, and I'm just gonna get flour on my mat. And remember, I like to do more of a wet crust, so I try to just, because it's chilled and everything, I try not to get my hands on it as much because I want that butter to stay cold. Actually, so then I just shape it into a disc very quickly, and then put it down, set that one aside. And then I go one roll with the rolling pin, and I lift up, and then I turn just a little bit, and then I do another roll and back and turn just a little bit. While I'm doing that, I'm also making sure that flour is underneath so that it doesn't stick. So then I do one cup, whoop, and if that happens, just lift up. And then put more flour on your crust. Okay, so lift up and then just turn. And then that way you get a great circle. You do have to be a little careful with it, but it's so easy. And see, I just pull underneath and then I just kind of twist. And then when I think it's about the right size, I will put my pie crust or my pie plate over it, and I need to go out just a little bit further. Not much, but a little bit. So you're still keeping that consistency of turning it. Oh, this one I'm doing for the freezer, so this one is perfect. Okay, so then I just fold it over very gently and fold it over and make a triangle. And then I put the point of the triangle in the middle of the pie plate. And then I just very carefully unfold it. And I sometimes have to adjust as I'm doing that, but makes it super easy to get it in the pan. Okay, now I am a person who likes the crust, so I do not cut my crust off all of the time. I like this is just a little bit too much, but for the most part, I just kind of, if I think it's too much, I just kind of pull a little bit, but then I just tuck it. Hope you can see me. I'm gonna turn it as I tuck. So I just take the extra and I just tuck it. And then like that part right there wasn't anything, so that's fine, and that's fine. And then this little bit right here, I'm just going to keep flour on your hands. And then there's some. So then I have it all tucked. Then I just, with my index finger and my thumb and my index finger, I just put here and I just pinch. And with the einkorn, it's stickier. With all-purpose, you're not gonna have this problem, but I always have to make sure that I have plenty of flour on my hands because the einkorn is sticky. But it has a very nutty, buttery, it's just, the flavor of it is amazing. I have loved this. Okay, now remember, this is gonna be for a cream pie, so I am actually, I don't even know why I'm crimping, because I fill it a mile high with whipped cream, so I don't even know if you see the crust. But, and if it does that, if your crust falls apart, it's very forgiving. Just go in there and put it back together. It's very forgiving. Okay, so then I'm going to put a piece of parchment down here, a parchment paper down right like this, and then I'm gonna put this in the refrigerator to let it get, the freezer, to flash freeze. Then I will wrap it real well with saran wrap, and I put the saran wrap over the parchment paper and under. And then I do that twice, and then just leave it in the freezer till Thanksgiving. So that one is gonna sit there. Now let's get, this can become cinnamon sugar crust. Now let's get this one ready, and I need some more flour. Make sure everything's good. And so once again, you have your circle shape, and then you're just gonna go one time, lift up, turn just a little bit. Then you're gonna go one time and back. Turn and lift just a little bit. Make sure that the flour is underneath there. One time and back. And you can kind of feel as you're lifting it, if it's kind of sticking, then lift it up and put flour underneath there. So I'm just doing like maybe a quarter turn each time. If your rolling pin starts to stick, just rub it with some more flour. And I think I'm at, see how that part was kind of separating? I'm just putting it back together. And then another, just one more time, and I think we're gonna be great. So then I just measure, and there's about an inch, so it's ready. So then what I do is I just carefully bring it and fold it in half, and then fold it in half to make a triangle. And then I put the triangle in the middle of the pie plate, and then just carefully unfold. And it might, like that piece right there kind of came apart. So while it's doing that, I'm just gonna mash that together. And then you just kind of have to adjust. Okay, so then I just kind of go around and measure and just kind of see. If you don't like a lot of crust, you can totally cut your crust. You can totally cut the rims of it for sure. Okay. All right. So then I'm just going to fold. I just go around and fold the excess so that when I go in to do my crimping, it's good. Okay, then index finger. I'm gonna make sure it doesn't have any crust on it. Okay, index finger and pinchers, and you just go around and pinch. And of course, because I'm doing this on video, I'm having issues. But you're just going to pinch. Okay. Now, what we're gonna do. Okay, so I forgot two things. In the filling, the sugar butter pie filling, I forgot to add a tablespoon of flour and a teaspoon of vanilla. So I'm gonna do that now. So we're just going to stir all that vanilla in and the flour, okay? All right, and so when you get this ready, you're gonna need a spatula. Okay, so I've got the pears, and remember they have that liquid in there. So we're gonna drain the liquid. So when you put the crust in the refrigerator for the 30 minutes, I am marking on my recipe notes to then drain the pears as well. That way all of the liquid is gone from the pears. So we're going to put our pears that have been strained. Oh, and I'm gonna put you all down so you can see. So we're gonna put them, those beautiful golden pears, we're gonna put them like so. So 6 or 7 pears is gonna be great for a 9-inch pie crust. And then I have a cup of chopped pecans. If you like your pecans whole, totally leave them whole. I just prefer chopped pecans. And I wasn't sure how many, so I'm actually gonna grab some more. I did chop more. So this is another half a cup. So I would say if you want more pecans, do another half a cup, which I'm going to do. Okay, so you want your pie, the pecans to cover the pears. If you just want to make the pear pecan pie, then the pear with pecans, just put a little bit. But if you want to do the pecan pear, then you're gonna want your pears to be covered with the pecans. And in order for me to do that, it has taken 2 cups of chopped pecans. Okay, so then you're going to take your filling here, and I just kind of, I don't know if you can, you're just going to kind of plop it on. I'm getting my spatula out because you want to get all of that yumminess onto the pie. And then you'll just carefully spread it. Now with the heat, it's going to melt on its own. But you just want it to cover those pecans, because I'm telling you, I don't know what it is, but it is just amazing. Like, I have to thank Miss Brenda for this example of a pie. Okay, so once you've got all that yumminess spread out, and it'll do the rest, it will spread out. Oops, there's some that I dropped. It will spread out on the rest. And so then I'm going to put it in my preheated oven at 350 degrees, and it will cook for 45 minutes to an hour, and I will show you when it's done what it's supposed to look like. I checked my pie at 45 minutes and it had set. So I waited an hour and then sliced, and it was perfect.